In this lesson, I'm going to give you a brief overview about something called the useEffect hook that you can use with React and React Native. Essentially, the way that this hook works is it performs what we would consider a side effect within your functional components. So in examples where you commonly see useEffect used are fetching data, subscribing to or getting information from an external event, or manually changing the screen. So some things that we need to consider when making a useEffect, we will often have to initialize some kind of state. And typically we'll do that with useState. And we might see this if we are trying to initialize a loading value or a user account, something like that. And in these cases, especially in the example I'm going to show you, where we are referring to accessing a user, we will create our own type, which we'll call user, for the data type. Next, we'll go ahead and we will have our useEffect hook, and this is going to be called whenever the component mounts, or essentially whenever it loads. Now, there's two ways that we can have the useEffect hook finish. One way is we can have it finish with an empty array, and that means it only runs once. So it'll run when that component loads. The second way is inside the brackets, you can have one or more state variable values. And whenever those variables change, that will call useEffect to run again, and any code within there will re-render. We can also use useEffect to handle any asynchronous operations, and asynchronous operations are things that happen off to the side, outside of the normal flow of how you're using the app, and those can be useful so that way the user is not waiting for that to finish. All right, so in terms of some side effects that you might see with when you use useEffect, like I said, this allows you to set up additional information. This also combines our lifecycle behaviors in one place. So we can determine how and when something is going to rerun when it depends on other things. And lastly, the whole idea of asynchronous operations. This allows us to go ahead and do something else while our app is continuing to be used. All right, so what I'm going to show includes this code, and I'm going to explain it, and the code is able to be accessed in the Google Doc that is linked below. I didn't bother with a repository for this example because it's literally just one file. All right, so let's go ahead and let's take a look at the code. First of all, let's see how it works, and then we'll take a look at the actual code itself. So this is nothing fancy here. When I click on reload, it is going to, we'll see the loading up animation, and then we will see, oops, hold on. Sorry, I guess I have to actually rerun my app. Okay, so we'll see the loading animation, and now we see a new user, and then a new error. And so essentially what's happening is each time I reload I press this reload, I'm updating the number of the user that I want to retrieve, and that is in turn changing the link for the data that I am accessing and what I am showing here. Okay, so let's see how this all looks. If we go up to the top, we're going to see that first of all, we have declared our type for our user, and this just represents the data points that data values each user will have. Secondly, we have a couple different state variables. So for starters, I have a state variable representing the current user. Now, one thing that you'll notice about the notation for user and error is that when we say useState and we are defining the type, we are saying the type is either user or null, so it's one or the other, and we're going to start it out with null. So basically what that means is that until the user has been defined, it is a null reference, and then once we have set it equal to a user, it will now be equal to a user. It can't be equal to anything else, just a user or null if nobody is currently signed in as a user. And then we just have our Boolean, whether or not we are still loading the data. We have an error message. This is useful if we are trying to see what kind of error we are getting back. Again, there might be no errors. So in that case, the status would be null. However, if there is an error, then we would make it a string. And then we have this user ID, which starts out as 1. Okay, so now useEffect. This right here, this is the function, like I said, that will automatically be called when this screen loads or when the component loads, whatever it may be. And the first thing that it is doing is it is going ahead and it is getting the data. And when I try to get the data, I'm doing an asynchronous operation. So this asynchronous task is basically telling me that I'm going to wait. It's going to do its thing, and I can still go ahead and do other things. This isn't holding everything up. and I'm going to set loading to true and my error to null. Basically meaning while I am currently trying to fetch my data, it's still loading and there are no errors to my knowledge. Then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to have a try. So this is similar to a try catch that we saw in Java. What we're going to see here is we are first going to try to get a response. And what this response is doing is it's saying it's going to wait while I try and fetch the data that I would get from this link. And this is just there's a lot of different sample sites you can use to just get generic data to use in your app, and that's what I'm doing here. The default link is to have this exact link and then /1 or a 2 or something like that. But in this case, I'm inserting the user ID so that way I can have this link update as I update users. Then what this is saying is I'm going to wait for my response. So I'm going to try to fetch my data, and then I'm going to wait for my response. And after I get the response, I'm going to take the response and I'm going to take this JSON file and I'm going to return it into a user object that is called data. So essentially what I've done here is I've said, okay, I want to go get the data. I want to get the data at this link. I'm going to take this JSON response that I got back. I'm going to wait for it. And then once I do get it, I'm going to take it and save it as a user item. And then I'm going to take that user item and I'm going to call my set user to assign that to my user variable. And then I have a catch where I can go ahead and, catch it. And then finally, this is what happens when it's all done. So it's going to try something. If there's an error, it'll go to my catch. And then if it is done successfully, it'll go to finally. And at that point, it'll set loading to false. And so now what that will do is that will make the spinny activity indicator wheel go away. And now I will see whatever I want to happen next. All right, so inside here, this right here at the end, these brackets, what this is doing, let me just come back up here. So this fetch data function is defined within my useEffect, and here is where I'm calling it. So I'm basically saying I want to try to do this. I am calling my function and it's defined up here. I realize the order of this looks kind of wonky, but this is just, how the code is set up. All right, so then we get down here and we take a look at what's actually being shown on the screen. And as you can see, there's not a whole lot that's being shown. What this is saying is I'm going to have a view, and then within the view, I'm going to do the following. So I have this inside the curly braces, that's telling me that I am doing some JavaScript. So again, the JavaScript is where I'm having my logic. And it's saying, so I'm checking to see if I'm loading. So if it's still loading, then I am going to have my activity indicator. If there's an error, I'm going to show my text. All right. Now, once it's done loading, then I will show my view. And inside my view, I will have my text with my user ID and my username. So basically what this is doing is it's saying, okay, I'm going to try loading. If I'm still loading, I'm either going to show an activity indicator or an error. And then once it's done loading, I'm going to show my view that will have my user ID and my username. And then when I click on the button, I'm going to update user ID, and I'm going to say take whatever its value was and return its value +1, and then that is going to be set to the set user ID. And that is how we end up getting our code to continually get new values for us as we run through. All right, so again, I just want to reiterate one more time that useEffect is going to be called whenever we load this component. So if there's setup code you want to run, you'd put that in here. If we have something that is inside the brackets, these are variables that it depends upon. So whenever user ID changes, useEffect is called again. If I had multiple variable values that my page might depend upon before it reloads, I could have several here and I could just separate them with commas. All right, I hope that was a good introduction to useEffect. Like I said, this app didn't really have a whole lot of purpose. I just wanted to show you a couple different ways how we could have this different types of types defined. So when we have a value and when we don't have a value, and how we could build up this URL to adjust it. So just a few things to note here, because this syntax is a little bit different than what we've seen before. I'm trying to zoom in a little bit here. All right, so this right here is what's called a backtick, this symbol right here. And it's actually located on the keyboard on the top row by the numbers on the left of the 1, by that little tilde. And so when you are concatenating a string, there's a couple ways to do it. This is one way, and this is using the backtick. We have the string, and then the $sign, and then the curly braces, and then the variable. So basically what this does is it says the HTTPS da 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 da, and then after the slash, it'll then just put whatever number user ID is. And so the backticks are just another way that we can concatenate our string. I usually prefer to use just the plus operator for concatenation, but I have seen this used a lot when looking at resources, especially when generating code from ChatGPT. So I just wanted to make sure that you understood what that was and know that that is not an apostrophe. So this right here is an apostrophe. That is not what we are looking at. We are looking at a backtick. All right, that is all. Thank you.